Hello and welcome to the next episode of the candidate interviews that we're conducting here at the North Phoenix Chamber of Commerce. We have the distinct honor of spending a few minutes here now with State Congressman Aaron Lieberman. Hello, sir.
Hello, good to see you. State Representative.
State Representative, excuse me, not State Congress, excuse me, State Representative for Legislative District 28, which is part of our chamber space. So I have 4 questions we've been asking every candidate. It's exactly the same set of questions, and we're posting these up on our website so that the business community can make informed decisions here on November 3rd. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, what differentiates you from your opponent from a business perspective?
Well, all of our legislative races here in Arizona are a little unusual at the state level, where you have 2 votes for the House of Representatives and there's 4 people on the ballot. So I'm a Democrat. I run alongside Kelly Butler. Kelly is a small business owner. She ran her husband's dental practice for many years. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur my entire career. When I first graduated college, I started a not-for-profit called Jumpstart that I built and grew into a national organization. It connects college students as literacy tutors all across the country. And with now some 50,000 college students have served as Jumpstart core members in 60 different cities. I think we got to about 1,000 core members a year while I was there, and maybe 20 or 30 different cities, something like that. I think it was about a $9 million budget by the time that I left. And while my passion was education, what I learned was how to build and grow a business, basically, and all of the challenges that go into scaling and growing something. I then left Jumpstart to start Oscillator Learning, which is a company that runs childcare programs all across the country, typically funded by the federal Head Start program to serve low-income kids. And once again, it was just me in a room kind of getting that thing off the ground. I quickly involved others, got a group of founders together, and I spent 15 years building and growing that company. And every entrepreneur, every business owner knows what it's like, where you're, especially in the early years, you're chief cook and bottle washer, you're never off. You wake up every morning thinking about it, you go to bed every night thinking about it. That was me for 15 years. And I'm proud to say that company grew quite large. Actually, by the time I was finished, we were probably up over 1,200 employees and $60 million a year in revenue. I'm still chairman, and the company's now up north of $100 million a year now that they got me out of the way. But when you're in that world, you realize everything comes down to people and how you can get great employees, how you can motivate them, how you can work as a team to accomplish an objective. I think when I look at my Republican colleagues on the other side, very nice people, they just haven't been in those business owner shoes, to my knowledge at least. I don't know them real well. So I can speak more just to my own experience as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a business builder. That's really where I came from, and honestly where I learned most of my lessons in how to get along with others, how to work with people, and how to make good things happen in communities.
So the second question I'd like to ask is, do you have any legislative plans that impact businesses in your that will impact businesses in your district? Either new legislation that's coming up that you would like to have introduced, or any repealing any old legislation that you would like to see removed as roadblocks to business?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I think there is the business community and the success of our schools are completely related and completely connected. You can't build a great company without great employees. Just doesn't happen. You can't get great employees without our great schools. And that's one of the reasons I ran for office. Growing up here in the mid-'80s, our schools were funded about 25th in the country. We had reasonable class sizes. Honestly, our politicians actually worked together instead of fighting each other. And it was a great state to live in, still is, but we had great schools. And our schools are still doing an amazing job, especially given how much funding has been cut. Since 2009, the legislature, controlled by Republicans for that whole time period, cut more from K-12 than any other state in the country. Even now, there have been some increases, which have been good, not nearly enough, but we're still not back to where we were in 2009, and it wasn't that great then. Unfortunately, you see this play out right where businesses live, which is hiring people. Before this horrible pandemic, almost all the businesses I knew had more jobs than they could find candidates to fill them, especially if where they were looking for skilled jobs. And I've taken lots of tours. I visited the Boeing factory where they're making the aircraft, and they can't find the people with the trade certificates they need to pull the wiring harnesses through. They're literally, these are, you know, millions and millions of dollars of aircraft just sitting there moving slower than they need to. As a state, we have a goal, which everyone has agreed on from the governor on down, to have 60% of our workforce have some post-high school experience. They call it post-secondary, which is, I always find a confusing term. We're at about 41% post-secondary right now. We don't have, I mean, to say it another way, almost 60% of our kids don't do anything after high school. And that's not good for businesses. They're not getting the skilled employees that they need. We have well over 100,000, they call them opportunity youth, ages, I think it's 16 to 23 or something in that range, who aren't working or in school. And so just think about this when we go back to pre-pandemic times. You have jobs that we can't find anyone for, and you have people not doing anything. The gap there is really a skill gap that desperately needs to be filled. Unfortunately, the legislature, again, in my view, moved in the wrong direction, slashed funding for higher education by 50%, going into the recession, has not really put any of it back. By the way, doubled funding for our Department of Corrections. So just think about that. We used to spend about well over $1 billion on higher ed, including community colleges, and about half that on our Department of Corrections, our prisons. We flipped those two numbers in the last decade. We'll spend $2 to lock you up for every $1 we spend helping you get a skill or a trade that'll make you a great employee. I see you shaking your head. It's crazy, right? You sit there and say, why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. That's been what we've been doing. And by the way, I mean, this sounds crazy too, but great employees start with kids going to preschool. We've seen, there's evidence, lots of evidence on this. When you get high quality pre-K, you get better students who get more likely to graduate high school, more likely to go on for some training after school. These are huge, huge differences. Arizona, 36 other states or so have moved forward with offering universal pre-K. Arizona has moved backwards. So in instance after instance where we should be making investments to help create a pipeline of great employees, we're slashing the funding. And when we're just throwing good money after bad, like in our prisons or even our Department of Child Safety, those are the two parts of our government that are growing faster than they are, larger than they were in 2009. So that's the first thing I'd say for our businesses. We've got to get towards that Achieve 60 goal. I, with a Republican colleague, filed a bill last go around to have a promise scholarship that would say for any low-income kid in Arizona, if you maintain a B average, I believe it was, you can go to 2 years of community college for free. What happens when you get a kid through community college? They're ready to go get those high-paying jobs that make such a difference. And in my view, that's how we should start restoring our funding for higher ed. The universities are doing okay. We need to fund the people who need that support to get to and through those certificate programs. So that promise scholarship is a huge thing for me. The first bill I ever introduced was a bill that would provide matching funds for AmeriCorps scholarships. So there's a federal AmeriCorps program where you do a year of service. You could be working at Habitat for Humanity or different not-for-profits. And then you get a $5,600 scholarship from the feds. We would have matched that with $5,600 in state money. At $10,000, $12,000, or $11,200, you can pay for 2 years of community college here in Arizona. I actually named that bill the John McCain Public Service Scholarship Fund and had the Speaker of the House co-sponsored it with me, a Republican, got that through the House. Actually 2 sessions in a row has gotten it through the House. But it died in the budget process where there just hasn't been any real willingness to kind of work across the aisle. More specifically to some of the business concerns and where we are in COVID right now, I think there's a couple things, one smaller, one larger, that we should be doing. First, for our restaurants, I don't know how many restaurants you have as members, but for our restaurants, the to-go cocktails has been an absolute lifesaver for them to be able to do that under the governor's executive orders. It's very popular with people, including state representatives. This is, you know, you can't get this anywhere else. And it really has been a lifeline for many restaurants. I know, because I talk to these owners all the time, it's been the thing that's been the only area where their business is up and the only area where they're actually, you know, producing more income, and that's helping them survive this time. So I think we definitely need to look at that. And if there are other areas in these executive orders that were done temporarily, but is actually something that makes sense, let's move forward and do it. And that's at the top of my list. I think the second thing, more importantly, because it could have a broader base, is our business owners need help right now in all of the additional expenses they've had to incur because of COVID-19. And my entire Democratic caucus is in the midst of getting a letter together to the governor to lay out. The governor has tens of millions and tens of millions of dollars in CARES Act funding that has not yet been spent and put to work. This is money that came from the feds, is here to respond to the pandemic. We're right in the middle of it. I hope it's not going to get any worse, so we should be spending those dollars right now. 10 million went out to Local First to help businesses that were closed due to the governor's executive orders with rent and mortgage payments. Really, really important. We think he should match that with at least 10 million, if not more, that would go to in grants to businesses that have had to reimburse expenses for modifications due to COVID. PPE, whether it's been PPE expenses that they've had to incur, whether it's been changing the physical layout. Again, I know a lot of our restaurants are trying to build out patios. Many people are looking at air filtration systems and things like that. Our businesses have had to incur a bunch of extra expenses to deal with COVID-19. I think we should try to see if we can provide some support for them, because we all know they haven't been able to charge more to get those costs covered. It just can't happen in this sort of environment. So we need to be doing all that we can to support our awesome small businesses. And the one other thing I'll say in that is, I think we could better define small business, or just be really clear that these resources should go to the smallest businesses first. Maybe that's the way to put it. I know we've talked with Local First about maybe looking at a 25 employee cap or something like this, because as helpful as the Paycheck Protection Plan was, some of those were massive businesses that got all of this money. I care about them. We need our big businesses to be successful too. But our small businesses should at a minimum have priority. Those are the ones that are, mom and pop, whatever you want to call it. Those are the ones that employ so many of our Arizonans, and we need to have them at the very front of our minds.
So you've been talking a little bit about, here we are during COVID, and I think this is through the pandemic. I think this is still fairly short-term thinking, and I would like to hear from you about your plans. If you can tell us about a little bit more longer-term economic growth ideas that you might have once we get post-COVID, right? And what are you thinking there?
This, again, I don't want to sound like I'm beating a drum here, but the single best thing we could do to grow our economy is strengthen our education system and pay particular attention to that post-secondary area. If you look at states like Colorado, about the same size, they have twice the GDP per capita that we do. Why is that? They have way higher percentages of their students that are going into that post-secondary world. We know, and this has been true over all of the jobs created since the Great Recession, the last 10 years or so, an incredible number. I think it's like north of 90% have been for post-secondary, people with post-secondary experience or higher. That's where the job growth is, and we need to have an education system that's producing that. If you talk to folks at the Greater Phoenix, what's it called, GPEC, Greater Phoenix Economic Council, they're recruiting the businesses, Chris Camacho, they're recruiting the businesses here to Phoenix. The first conversation they have with people is, the first questions that people raise about moving there is, well, what is your education system like? Am I going to be able to find the talent? And that works on a couple of levels. That works on both, am I going to be able to find the tradesmen, the engineers, the people I need for my job. But by the way, are my employees going to be able to put their kids in good public schools? And Arizona is far too uneven. We have some districts that do great. Historically, they've been able to do bonds and overrides and kind of bootstrap themselves, but all bonds and overrides are asking the people in those districts to pay more taxes. We need the state to have a commitment to funding our schools in a much more deeper way, and a particular commitment to post-secondary, whether that be our if you want to call them trade schools or career and technical schools, whatever you want to call them. That is literally what will turbocharge our economy and help us continue to grow more than any other thing that we can do. And that's really got to be our focus. But I will say, I don't want to take anything for granted. Who knows how long it's going to be to get a vaccine? Who knows how long it's going to take for everyone to get that? One of the business owners, an ld28 business owner, by the way, I did a panel on my Facebook website, an interview with 3 small business owners. One of them would the tamale store is right up in North Phoenix. I would encourage people to go look at that. And I was just asking them, how are you leading through COVID? How are you dealing with these these kind of difficult COVID times. And one of them had said to me, he didn't say it during that interview, but he had said to me previously, he's like, we can't plan anymore. We used to have quarterly planning and we laid it all out. And he's like, how can you plan when you're just trying to figure, you don't know, every month can be so different than the month before. And I think that's just the reality for a lot of our business owners right now, is what the plan is, whatever gets me through this week or this month till we get out of this horrible nightmare. And our state government and our federal government need to step up front and center to help us through that.
One final thought I would like to ask you, why should business owners in ld28 support your candidacy? Is there anything else that you haven't shared with us yet that you would like to end on? Any final notes?
Yeah, very much appreciate that question. And, you know, first and foremost, I want to make sure people know where ld28 is. That's one of the questions. Usually state legislative races and districts are kind of unclear to folks. So it's made more complicated, but it has a very awkward shape. But essentially, in your area, north of Camelback Road, we go all the way up to Union Hills on either side of the 51. On the west side, we go all the way to I-17 between Northern and Peoria, and the bottom of the district kind of steps up, and the top of the district goes like that. So you may be a little bit in, a little bit out, particularly if you're near that Paradise Valley Community College area that's literally right on, falls in Legislative District 28, across the street is a different district. But the one thing I would want all of your members to know is reach out. State government at this level is here. So someone said to me, state representative is both a job title and a job description. And I totally appreciate that. Anytime I get an email or a phone call from a constituent who identifies themselves as a constituent, I return it and get back to people and share what's going on. So if you do reach out, and I will post my information if we haven't, but it's alieberman@azledge.gov on email. If you identify yourself as an ld28 constituent, especially even if you send a form letter, which often happens, people are getting, you know, interest groups and others are having people generate these form letters. Even if it's a form letter, I'll respond. But if you sit there and type out a couple of sentences, I look at those things absolutely first, because I'm here to represent you whether you vote for me or not. And if there's issues that come up that you're dealing with, so many of the issues that most of our businesses deal with often are zoning or local in nature, and that's really the city of Phoenix that helps. But I'm very friendly with Deborah Stark. I work very well with the mayor. You know, if I can make a phone call on your behalf to help, I'll do that, no problem. And then there's also a lot of issues that are regulated at the state level with regulations that in some instances don't make a lot of sense. I had a group, this isn't quite a business issue, but I had a group of folks reach out from the very, very top of the district who live in some of the manufactured homes up there, who couldn't play bingo for more than a couple of months because they were hitting some arcane limit on bingo games. I mean, this makes absolutely no sense that the state is involved with this. I worked with them closely, worked with my Republican colleagues, got a bill unanimously through the House. Unfortunately, it died with the COVID thing, but we will fix that problem. And that's honestly why I like state government. If you're running into things that just don't make sense with your state regulator, I would want to at least know about it. Sometimes it's just a call over to say, hey, is this an interpretation? Is this really a rule? A lot of people have been through that. But even if a legislative fix is needed, that's something that's actually possible when you're working in the state of Arizona. And you don't need a high-paid lobbyist. You don't, just reach out and call. And I'm certainly willing to go to bat for any business owner in ld28.
Wonderful. Aaron Lieberman, Legislative District 28. Thank you for sharing a few minutes with us today during this call, and I really appreciate it. We will have this posted up on our website. Give me about 24 hours or so, and I'll get a link to you for the video.
Awesome. And I should mention, I mentioned this before, but for your business owners, I tend to share stuff on LinkedIn for the business community. And feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's just Aaron Lieberman, I think, or maybe @Aaron4AZ. And I'll definitely, when this comes out, I'll share that on that platform as well. And again, stay in touch. Don't be a stranger. I'm here for you all.
So in the comments below on the YouTube video, and I think I'll actually include it as a splash as well, we'll have the email address that you gave us, and I'll include your LinkedIn profile. Does that work?
Yeah, that's great. And you can do Facebook too. Facebook is another great way if people aren't familiar on LinkedIn. I tend to make sure the business stuff gets on LinkedIn, but Facebook is Aaron Lieberman for Arizona, or again, if you search @Aaron4AZ on Facebook, you'll get it.